There comes a moment, often in the quiet aftermath of longing, when life leans in and whispers not to your ears, but to the center of your being, it is time. Not time to achieve or to strive or to prove anything to the world, but time to awaken. Time to lift the veil you've worn for far too long and see not with your eyes but with your soul that what you've been chasing has never been somewhere out there. It has always lived in the silent sanctuary of your own heart. We live in a world enamored by sound, by noise, by the endless clamoring of minds caught in the performance of becoming. But the truth, the unshakable, eternal truth, is never shouted. It is whispered in stillness. And these words that now meet your awareness, they are not meant to be admired, quoted, or analyzed. They are meant to be lived. Let them become your breath. Let them dissolve your armor. Let them carry you back to the place you have never truly left, the sacred now. For you are not your schedule, you are not your obligations, you are not your accomplishments nor your fears. You are not the mask you wear to be loved. You are not the silence you swallowed to be safe. You are not the story others wrote for you when you were too young to hold a pen. You are the soul behind it all. You are the witness to the dance. You are the vast eternal sky, and every role you play is but a passing cloud. The ego wants you to listen to these words, nod, feel inspired for a while, and then return to your familiar suffering. Because ego cannot survive your awakening. But the soul doesn't want you to just hear. The soul wants you to live. It wants you to embody truth until it becomes indistinguishable from your breath. Until peace no longer visits you occasionally, but builds its nest in your ribcage. Until you look in the mirror and do not flinch, because you have remembered you are not your reflection, you are the light behind it. And so I invite you now, not as a teacher, but as a fellow traveler, to drop the illusion that your life begins once everything makes sense. Drop the illusion that healing is a destination, or that you must wait to be ready. You are already whole, not someday. Now, in this breath, in this stillness, you do not need to climb any mountain to find God. You need only to sit still long enough to feel the divinity that pulses through your own being. This is not new information. It is ancient. It is the wisdom of Lao Tzu's Tao, of Jesus' still kingdom within, of Rumi's longing that melts all separation. Every master, every scripture, every truth speaker was pointing in the same direction, not to a path you must find, but to a presence you must remember. And that presence is you. Can you feel it? That sacred pulse, that silent knowing. It's not asking you to become anything. It's asking you to unbecome everything you are not. To peel away the layers of protection, expectation, and projection until what remains is something soft and vast and holy. That is not weakness. That is your truest strength. Because when you live from the soul, you no longer need to defend yourself. You no longer need to chase or compete or beg for validation. You move through life like water yielding, yet unstoppable, clear, yet deep, soft, yet carrying the power to shape mountains. And yes, the world will still spin, people will still leave, plans will still collapse, but you will remain anchored, not because life becomes easier, but because you stop resisting its flow. You no longer need to understand every twist of the path, because you trust the one who shaped the path. You stop gripping and start allowing. You stop surviving and start living. Living, truly living, is not about collecting experiences. It's about inhabiting presence. It's not about chasing happiness. It's about dissolving the barriers to joy that already exists. Joy is not an outcome. Joy is your natural state, uncovered when you stop trying to be anything but what you are. Let every breath be your affirmation. Let every pause be your return. Let these words be not a sermon, but a mirror, reflecting back to you the divine radiance you've always carried. You don't need to do anything with them. You need only to be with them, sit with them. Let them echo into the quiet chambers of your heart until something ancient stirs, until the river of your soul, long dammed by doubt, begins to flow again. And when it does, you will remember, not as a thought, not as an idea, but as a knowing that pulses beneath your name, beneath your history, beneath the roles you play, a knowing that whispers, I am not broken, I am not lost, I am not becoming, I am. Live from that place. Speak from that place. Love from that place. And watch as life, once a burden to endure, becomes a mystery to dance with. So do not just hear these words. Live them. Let them become your practice, your prayer, your present. Let them lead you back, not to a new self, but to the eternal self you've always been. And when you do, the world will not need to change for you to feel peace. Because the peace you seek is not waiting in the distance. It is waiting in you. And now, as you stand at the threshold of this remembrance, you may feel a trembling, not of fear, but of release. Like an old tree letting go of autumn's final leaf, you too are shedding identities that no longer belong to the living truth of who you are. Do not resist this unraveling. It is grace in motion. It is the gentle undoing of the false, so that the eternal may rise. Trust that nothing real can be lost, and nothing unreal is needed for your wholeness. You see, healing does not happen through understanding alone. It happens through surrender. It is not the work of the mind, but of the soul. The mind wants to fix. The soul wants to reveal. And when you stop grasping for explanations and begin opening to the deeper rhythm of your being, the cracks in your story become doorways to the sacred. Your wounds, no longer mistakes to hide, become altars of transformation. Each scar a symbol not of defeat, but of the light that never left you. And in this space, you begin to move differently, not faster, not louder, but truer. There is a softness in your step, not because you are uncertain, but because you are no longer rushing to outrun the moment. The need to arrive dissolves, and in its place arises the realization that you are already in the presence of everything holy. This breath, this heartbeat, this moment, the entire universe is present here, pulsing with the same intelligence that brought stars into being. And you are not separate from it. You are the wave, remembering it is the ocean. Let your life become the practice of devotion, not to an ideal, not to an image, but to truth itself. Not the kind of truth that demands agreement or validation, but the kind that needs no defense. The kind that is lived in silence. Walk with that truth, and you will find that your mere presence begins to heal what you do not touch, begins to illuminate what you do not explain. You do not need to be extraordinary to live a sacred life. You need only to be real, real in your joy, real in your sorrow, real in your becoming, and real in your stillness. It is this authenticity, the courage to be without masks, that becomes your highest offering to the world. Because when you show up whole, you remind others that they too are allowed to be whole. And so, let the spiritual not be something you practice on Sundays or in solitude. Let it be the way you fold your hands, the way you speak another's name, the way you listen when nothing is being said. Let it be how you rise from difficulty, not with resistance, but with reverence. Because to be alive is already the miracle. To breathe, to feel, to hurt, to hope, this is sacred ground. And the more you live from this sacred ground, the more you find that love is not a possession to acquire, but a presence to embody. It is not earned, it is remembered. It is not given to you from the outside, it radiates from within. And when you walk as love, speak as love, serve as love, the world around you cannot help but soften in your wake. You don't need to shout from mountaintops to share your truth. You only need to live it. In the small, uncelebrated moments, in the silent decisions to be kind when it is not required, in the quiet choices to forgive even when the world justifies your anger. These are the revolutions that shift worlds. So carry this knowing not as a doctrine, but as a breath. Let it shape the way you look at strangers. Let it inform the way you talk to yourself when no one is watching. Let it be the music beneath your thoughts, the warmth behind your words, the peace beneath your striving. Because when you begin to live from this place, life no longer feels like a riddle to solve. It feels like a river to float within, a mystery to honor, a dance you don't need to lead. You surrender your urgency to understand, and you begin to feel the grace of simply allowing, not passively, not as a victim, but as a co-creator who trusts the intelligence of the whole, even when you cannot see the pattern. And in that trust you rise. Not above others, but above the illusion that you are alone, that you are lacking, that you are anything less than a living expression of the infinite. So walk gently now, not because you are fragile, but because everything around you is holy, including you. especially you. There will come a time, perhaps now, perhaps in a breath not yet taken, when you feel the weight of all you've carried begin to tremble. Not because you have dropped it, but because you've realized it was never yours to carry. The burdens of needing to be enough, of proving your worth through effort and perfection, were not born from your soul. They were stitched together by a world that forgot the sanctity of simply being. And in that forgetting, we learn to betray ourselves for the comfort of acceptance, to trade our truth for the currency of praise. But you, dear soul, you are waking up, and that awakening is not always loud. It doesn't always announce itself with fanfare or fireworks. Sometimes it feels like heartbreak. Sometimes it arrives disguised as loss, as confusion, as a holy emptiness that nothing outside of you can seem to fill. But do not misinterpret the void. It is not a sign of failure. It is an invitation to stop patching the cracks and finally listen to what's trying to emerge from within. Because in truth, you are not becoming, you are remembering. Remembering the texture of your own spirit before it was pressed into molds that never quite fit. Remembering that you were not born to conform, you were born to shine, to express, to expand. And the expression of your soul will never look like anyone else's. It was never meant to. But for so long, you were taught to shrink, to speak only when spoken to measure your worth by external applause. And so, like so many others, you dimmed your light, not because it lacked brilliance, but because you were told it was too much, too wild, too free. Now, though, the soul is stirring. It has waited in silence, patiently watching as you searched outside for what could only be found within. And in the echo of every disappointment, in the quiet ache beneath each success that didn't bring the joy you imagined, it is whispered not to punish you, but to guide you home. The home you seek is not a place, it is a presence. And you carry it with you in every breath. You carry it in the way your heart breaks open, in the way your spirit softens in the presence of truth. You carry it in your tears, in your laughter, in the still moments when you are no longer performing, but simply existing. And that existence, in its purest form, is sacred. You were not put here to win at life. You were not sent into this world to outshine others or prove your importance. You were born to embody the divine, not as an abstract concept, but as a lived reality. You were born to be a portal through which love moves, through which presence speaks, through which the universe experiences itself in form. And love, real love, asks nothing of you but your honesty. It does not need you to be fixed. It does not require you to be fearless. It only asks you to be real. To show up not as the polished image you've curated, but as the raw, beautiful soul who is willing to be seen even when they feel broken. Because the cracks in your armor are not flaws. They are the entry points for light. They are where the divine slips through and says, you are still enough, especially now. So many of us have been conditioned to strive, to hustle, to earn rest through exhaustion. We believe stillness is laziness, that softness is weakness, that surrender is giving up. But surrender is not defeat, it is alignment. It is the sacred act of no longer resisting the flow of what is. It is the exhale after a lifetime of holding your breath. It is the moment you decide, not intellectually but viscerally, to trust the intelligence that breathes galaxies into existence and also breathes you. Can you trust it? Can you let go of the need to constantly explain your journey, to justify your being, to prove that you are doing enough to deserve simply exist? Can you lay that burden down and let your life be a prayer, not of words, but of presence? Because life is not asking for your perfection. It is asking for your participation. It is asking you to be awake to the moments that unfold like sacred offerings in the most ordinary of places. The smell of morning, the quiet between heartbeats, the glance of a stranger that reminds you you're not alone. These are not detours from your path. These are the path. And when you live in presence, when you inhabit the now so fully that even your breath feels like a hymn, you begin to taste eternity in every fleeting second. Time slows, not because the world changes, but because you are no longer rushing through it, missing the miracles in your pursuit of meaning. You start to see yourself differently. Not through the lens of your past, not as a resume of achievements or a list of mistakes, but as a living, breathing part of the whole. And that whole, it includes everything. The joy and the sorrow, the clarity, and the confusion, the light and the shadow, all of it belongs. You don't need to banish your darkness to claim your divinity. Your divinity includes the shadow, the shame, the aching places that still remember the sting of abandonment. It includes the nights you cried alone and the mornings you pretended to be okay. Nothing is left out of love. Nothing is unworthy of healing. And so you begin to speak to yourself differently. You offer yourself the gentleness you once reserved for others. You start to trust the inner voice that doesn't scream for attention, but whispers with a wisdom that feels like home. You begin to parent yourself with compassion. You let the little one inside you, the one who still flinches at raised voices or holds their breath to feel safe, know that they are no longer alone, that you are here, that they are held. And as this healing ripples through your being, your outer world begins to reflect your inner shifts. Not because you forced it to, but because energy cannot lie. When you change your frequency, life responds. Not with reward, but with resonance. You attract not what you want, but what you are. So when you become peace, peace finds you. When you become love, love flows in unexpected ways. When you become enough, you stop begging for crumbs because you've remembered the feast that already lives inside you. This is not about bypassing pain or pretending that life doesn't hurt. This is about standing in your truth while the storm rages and knowing you are still the sky. This is about letting the pain move through you without becoming your name, about grieving without collapsing, about walking through fire and still carrying water for others. It is about living in such alignment with your soul that you no longer confuse success with significance or busyness with purpose. It is about waking up each day and asking not, what must I do to be worthy, but how can I serve love through my presence today? And your presence, yes, your simple, honest, embodied presence is more powerful than you can imagine. It can soften the hardest heart. It can bring comfort to a soul in despair. It can remind others of what they've forgotten about themselves, that they too are divine, that they too are held, that they too can return. You are not here by accident. You are not reading these words by chance. This is a divine appointment, a soul remembering session. A moment outside of time where the veil lifts and you see clearly for a heartbeat that everything you've ever needed has always lived within. So take this knowing and live it. Let it soak into your bones. Let it shape the way you walk, the way you speak, the way you choose. Do not just visit this place of presence. Build your home here. Not because it will make you perfect, but because it will make you whole. And wholeness is the soil where miracles grow. You are that soil. You are the miracle. You are the light you've been praying for. Now rise, not with urgency, but with reverence. You are not here to strive. You are here to remember. You are not here to perform. You are here to embody. You are not here to wait for life to begin. You are life. So live it. Live it deeply. Live it slowly. Live it truthfully. Live it fully. Live these words. But you, beautiful soul, were not meant to be a museum of old pain. You are not a monument to regret. You are not here to rehearse yesterday's sorrow under the disguise of survival. And still, how easily we do. We carry forward the language of our wounds, calling them identities. We cradle our hurts like relics, afraid that if we release them, we will lose part of ourselves. Yet the truth is this: you are not your pain. You are not what happened to you. You are not the silence you endured, the betrayal you witnessed, the shame you were taught to wear like armor. These were chapters, yes, but they were never the title. They are part of the landscape, but not the horizon. The soul does not cling to history. The soul yearns only for liberation. And this yearning, it is sacred. It is not weakness. It is not impatience. It is the divine restlessness of truth stirring beneath the surface of your being. It is the whisper that says there must be more than this. And there is. There always was. Not more to achieve, not more to gather, but more to release. You see, healing is not the act of becoming new. It is the surrendering of the old. It is allowing what no longer serves your becoming to fall away. Like autumn leaves, it is natural to let go. It is holy to shed. But the ego fears loss. It tells you that without your story, you are nothing. Without your wounds, who will you be? You will be free. You will be light. You will be the sky, unburdened by the storm. Because the past, though it shaped you, was never meant to define you. It was a passage, not a prison. And every time you return to it with resentment, with guilt, with self-punishment, you reinforce the illusion that you are still there. But you are not. You are here, in this breath, in this now. And the now is untouched by yesterday. Yes, you have felt pain. You have endured seasons where the light seemed to hide, but look at you. You did not disappear. You did not dissolve. Something in you stayed, something stronger than despair, something wiser than circumstance. That something is your soul, and it is ready now. Ready not to forget, but to forgive. Not to erase, but to transform. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is not excusing what was done. It is the sacred art of saying, I will not carry this another day. It is the declaration that your future deserves more space than your past. It is a gift you give yourself not because the other deserves it, but because your freedom does. And so I ask you gently but firmly, what are you still carrying that no longer belongs to this chapter of your life? What resentment have you dressed in righteousness? What story have you told so often it has become a wall between you and peace? The soul is not here to be guarded. It is here to be seen, to be lived, and to be free. Let the tears come if they must. They are not weakness. They are sacred water. They are the baptism of becoming. Let them wash away the hardness that has clung to your heart. Let them carry out the sediment of stored grief. You do not have to be strong in the way the world defines strength. You have nothing to prove. True strength is surrender. It is the quiet courage to say, I no longer wish to suffer. It is the willingness to release even when the mind says hold. It is bowing to life, not in defeat, but in reverence. And when you bow, when you finally exhale, all you've been holding in, you will not crumble. You will rise. You will rise not as the old self reconstructed, but as the truth unburdened. And in that rising, the world changes, not because the world has shifted, but because your vision has. You begin to see that every painful event was not a punishment, but a portal. That every heartbreak was not destruction, but preparation. That the cracking open of your heart was not the end, but the beginning of your soul breathing more freely. You begin to thank the past, not for its pain, but for its power to awaken you. And in that gratitude, freedom blooms. Not the freedom of circumstance, but the freedom of presence. The kind that walks with grace even through shadows. The kind that smiles not from perfection, but from peace. This is the liberation your soul longs for, not escape, but embodiment. Not detachment, but deep presence. Not avoidance of your wounds, but the soft return to them, with love, with compassion, with the hands of the divine cradling every broken part and whispering, you are still whole. So let go, beloved. Not because the pain wasn't real, but because your spirit is more real still. Let go, not to forget, but to finally remember. Remember who you were before the hurt. Remember who you were when joy was your natural language. Remember the you that was never diminished by any loss, only hidden beneath the dust of forgetting. You are not your past. You are the presence that has survived it. And now you are free. So now you stand not at an end, but at a return. Not at the edge of a precipice, but at the threshold of your own soul, wide open and waiting. You've peeled back the layers. You've sat with your pain and heard its voice. You've touched the cold stone of memory and let it speak, not to haunt you, but to free you. And now, the silence you once feared becomes your sanctuary. The stillness that once felt empty now sings with presence. There is nothing more to seek, nothing more to earn, nothing more to become. You are the arrival you have always been waiting for. You are the destination hiding beneath every desperate detour. You are the peace that once felt distant, now blooming from within like a long-forgotten seed, watered at last by your own permission to feel, to soften, to simply be. And the world around you, though it has not changed, feels different now. Not because it became easier, but because you stopped expecting it to complete you. You see through the veil. You no longer ask life to prove your worth. You no longer beg others to love what you yourself have only tolerated. You have reclaimed your name, not the one written in documents, but the one whispered in eternity. The name only the divine remembers. The name of light, of truth, of presence. And when you live from that name, when you walk as your true self without apology, there's no need for validation. You do not convince the sun to rise. You do not negotiate the bloom of a rose. You do not argue with gravity to be held. So too, you do not need to defend your light. You simply shine quietly, powerfully, unshakably. There is a gentleness to you now, not because you are fragile, but because you are no longer at war with yourself. You no longer carry armor into conversation. You no longer mistake achievement for love or silence for peace. You speak with clarity, not to be heard, but because truth has become your breath. You listen without needing to respond because your identity no longer depends on performance. And from that space, life becomes what it was always meant to be. Not a ladder to climb, but a dance to join. Not a test to pass, but a canvas to paint with every color of your being. You taste your food differently. You hear music as if for the first time. You hold hands with the present, no longer asking it to hurry or explain itself. You are here, fully, finally, radiantly here. And in this here-ness, something ancient awakens in you. A memory without words, a presence beyond thought. And knowing that the love you sought was never lost, that the light you longed for was never out there, that the healing you prayed for was never delayed. It was always within reach, just waiting for you to turn inward. So now, let your life become a living prayer. Let your walk be a meditation. Let your breath be your teacher. Let your laughter be your offering. Let your stillness be your power. You no longer need to push. You no longer need to strive. You have nothing to prove. You have only to remember. Remember that the source which created all things dwells not in temples or heavens far away, but in the quiet chamber of your own heart. Remember that joy is not earned, it is your birthright. Remember that love is not something to deserve, it is the language of your soul. Remember that peace is not a reward, it is your original nature. And as you walk forward light in step, soft in gaze, whole in spirit, may the world reflect your transformation, not with applause, but with resonance. May you meet others not to fix them, but to love them as you have learned to love yourself. May you become the presence that reminds others that they too are home. This is the revolution, not of nations, not of systems, but of spirit. It begins quietly, in a single breath, in a single choice, in a single soul saying, I will no longer abandon myself. You are that soul. You are that breath. You are that revolution. So go now not in search, but in remembrance. Do not just hear these words. Live them. Let them root in your cells. Let them rise in your silence. Let them become the way your spirit walks this earth. Because you, beloved, are not a seeker. You are the sought. And the moment you stop running, the divine catches you not to change you, but to reveal that you were never lost. You are the light. You are the home. You are the truth. And you are free. There is a sacred invitation whispered into the silence of every morning. Live today not as a routine, not as a rehearsal, but as if it were your last. Not from fear, but from reverence. Not from panic, but from presence. For when you remember that nothing is promised, not even the breath you are taking now, everything becomes sacred. Every glance, every step, every ordinary act, drenched suddenly in meaning, becomes a prayer to the eternal. What if today was not just another day, but the final brushstroke on the masterpiece of your life? Would you rush through it in worry? Would you carry grudges into its fragile hours? Or would you finally see the miracle in your own hands, in the eyes of those you love, in the soft hush of your own heartbeat? To live as if this were your last day is not to dwell in morbidity. It is to awaken. It is to peel away the illusion of tomorrow and let the present moment shine so brightly that it blinds every lie you've ever believed about what matters. The Tao Te Ching reminds us that life is a series of natural and spontaneous changes. Do not resist them. That resistance is where suffering lies. But presence, that is where God breathes. You are not here forever. This body will fade. These roles you play will dissolve. The house you built, the titles you gathered, the opinions you feared, none of them will follow you beyond the veil. But your love will. Your awareness will. Your choices made in truth, your compassion given freely, your courage to forgive, these are eternal. These are what carry you home. When you live each day as if it were your last, you don't postpone your joy. You don't wait to say, I love you or I forgive you. You don't let pride write the ending to a story still aching for peace. You understand that no moment is too small for significance, and no soul is unworthy of your kindness, including your own. Imagine walking through this day with the awareness that every encounter is holy, that every person you pass is a fellow traveler on the same brief journey through form. How gently you would walk, how carefully you would speak, how quickly you would release the need to be right in favor of being real. Because when the ego dissolves in the presence of impermanence, only love remains. And yet, how quickly we forget. We get lost in the illusions of time as if tomorrow is guaranteed. We speak harshly, assuming there will be time to apologize. We stay in jobs that suffocate us, relationships that numb us, patterns that diminish us all because we think we have more time. But time, beloved, is not a promise. It is a gift, a miracle. A single breath is a universe, and one day you will take your last. Will you have lived fully by then? Will you have said what your soul came here to say? Will you have danced your dance, sung your song, wept your tears, and poured your essence into the world without restraint? To live this way consciously, presently, passionately is not to deny the future, but to surrender the illusion that it is where your life begins. Your life is not out there. It is not waiting in some imagined someday. It is here. Now, in this inhale, in this exhale, in this tender, fleeting, holy instant, you must not wait to live. The soul cannot thrive on delays. There is no spiritual awakening that begins tomorrow. There is only this moment and your willingness to be completely alive within it. This day is a cathedral, not built of stone, but of seconds, not lit by stained glass, but by awareness. Enter it barefoot. Enter it reverently. Let your thoughts be prayers. Let your actions be offerings. Let your silence be filled not with absence, but with presence. And let love be the altar upon which you lay your worries down. Living each day as if it were your last is not a practice in despair. It is the highest form of gratitude. It is the soul's way of saying, thank you for this chance. Thank you for this breath. Thank you for the simple, sacred fact that I exist. And from this reverence comes transformation. When you begin to see the day not as a burden, but as a canvas painted by divine hands, something inside you softens. You stop chasing meaning and start becoming it. You begin to realize that the greatest prayer is not spoken aloud, but lived in the way you pour yourself into every sacred now. A smile given freely, a moment of stillness shared, a truth told without needing reward. This is where the divine reveals itself not in thunder or spectacle, but in your smallest acts done with great love. We have been taught to measure our lives by milestones, by trophies, by achievements carved into stone. But the soul is not interested in what you've gathered. It wants to know what you've given, not what you've built, but what you've become in the process of living. It asked, did you love fearlessly? Did you forgive fully? Did you notice the stars, the laughter, the quiet sobs in the night? Or did you rush past the miracles, trying to control a future that was never yours to command? There is a peculiar wisdom in remembering death not as a shadow to be feared, but as a mirror held up to life. It does not ask you to mourn, but to wake up. It does not steal your days, it returns them to you. Clearer, brighter, weightless. It says, if not now, when? And you realize the someday you've been waiting for is not coming, because it's already here. To live as if this were your last day is not to be reckless. It is to become exquisitely aware. Aware that every word you speak plants a seed, that every thought you dwell on shapes your being, that every time you choose compassion over judgment, silence over noise, truth over pretense, you are chiseling your soul into its truest form. You no longer need to strive to be remembered. You need only to be fully present. The world forgets names, statues crumble, but presence leaves an imprint on eternity. A moment of pure love given in silence echoes far longer than a lifetime of applause. And so walk gently through this day, not timidly but reverently, as one who knows they are walking through the sacred. Notice the way the sunlight rests on the leaves, as if even the trees are being kissed by the infinite. Listen to the wind not just as sound but as message. Feel your own breath and marvel at the miracle that it is happening at all. You were not placed here to survive this day. You were placed here to sanctify it, to meet it as a lover meets a long-lost companion with awe, with tears, with full-hearted devotion. What if you stopped waiting for joy and began living from it? What if you stopped protecting your heart and started offering it as a gift? Not because life is safe, but because your soul was never fragile. It was made to feel, to risk, to open, to dance, even while trembling. The mind may argue, it may insist there are things left undone, goals unmet, stories unfinished, but the heart speaks a simpler truth. You are not here to complete a checklist. You are here to complete the moment, and in doing so, you complete yourself. Everything you run toward will one day dissolve. The only thing that endures is who you become in the running. So run not toward the world's favor, but toward your own truth. Run toward your soul's calling, not its avoidance. And if you must run, run with love trailing behind you like a ribbon of light. Life, when stripped of its distractions, is not a puzzle to be solved, but a song to be sung. Not a test to be passed, but a presence to be lived. And in singing your song with honesty, with depth, with reverence for the brevity of it all, you become the very sound of divinity expressed through flesh. So do not wait. Do not wait for the perfect time to be real. Do not wait for the world to validate what your heart already knows. Do not wait to give, to forgive, to rise, to weep, to speak, to shine, because the soul does not measure life in years, but in the depth of each lived breath. And this breath, this one right now, is holy. There is a tenderness that arrives when you no longer treat time as an enemy, but as an intimate companion. You begin to hold each hour with both hands, not squeezing it for meaning, but caressing it for the miracle that it is. You no longer look past the moment in search of something more, for you have come to see that the moment is the something more, it is the whole, the holy, the hidden gift disguised as ordinary life. When you surrender to the impermanence of all things, a strange peace overtakes you. It is not the peace of knowing how it all ends, but the peace of no longer needing to know. You become like the river, not asking where it will go, but flowing anyway. You trust that each bend is placed by grace, each stone beneath your surface meant to shape your song. You flow not because the path is clear, but because stillness was never your nature. You were born to move with life, not resist it. Gratitude then becomes not a practice, but a posture, a way of standing before the world with arms unclenched, eyes wide, and heart exposed. You begin to thank the silence for its wisdom, the sorrow for its tenderness, the mistakes for their brutal, sacred honesty. Nothing is wasted anymore. Even your most broken moments become teachers dressed in humility. There is no part of you that has been unloved by the universe. Even your regrets have been held. Even your forgetfulness has been embraced by something infinite, waiting with patient arms for your return. This day, this fleeting constellation of minutes, is not asking you to earn your worth, it is asking you to remember it. To walk through the hours, not proving who you are, but allowing who you are to rise unfiltered. And when you touch that depth within you, when you taste the eternal in a single breath, you begin to live from an entirely different place. You become less concerned with how others perceive you and more devoted to how sincerely you meet your own soul. The masks begin to fall, not because you force them, but because they no longer fit. Truth becomes your only skin. What once required effort now flows with ease. You speak, not to impress, but to express what the infinite is whispering through you. You create, not to be seen, but because beauty insists on moving through your hands. You forgive, not to be holy, but because resentment feels foreign in your now softened heart. And in this space, something profound begins to shift. Time no longer feels like a threat, but a river carrying you home. Relationships become mirrors, not battlegrounds. Challenges become invitations, not punishments. Every moment, even the ones that bruise, becomes a part of your return to the real. You begin to notice that the soul doesn't measure success in triumphs, but in presence. That the most important question is no longer, what have I done? But have I shown up with love? And when that becomes your compass, life stops being something to conquer it, becomes something to commune with. You are no longer driven by the noise of the world. You are drawn by the silence within it. That silence has become your sanctuary, your teacher, your oldest truth. In it, you remember who you were before the world told you who to be. And from that remembering, you start to live not as a reaction, but as a revelation. Each breath becomes a soft return. Each step becomes a prayer of gratitude to the earth beneath you. You are not walking towards something. You are walking as something. as peace, as presence, as a fragment of the eternal wearing a human form just long enough to say, I was here and I loved. When you live with the awareness that each breath might be the final word of your earthly story, everything becomes illuminated with unspeakable clarity. You stop arguing over illusions. You stop carrying stories that no longer echo truth. You no longer need to be right. You simply need to be real. And in that realness, you discover a purity that the world could never give and therefore could never take away. There is something quietly heroic about those who have touched the impermanence of all things and yet still choose to open their hearts. It takes no strength to build walls, but to love anyway, to hope anyway, to walk barefoot through the fragile hours of a vanishing day with your soul exposed and your arms outstretched. This is the mark of one who has awakened. You begin to see that no moment is a repetition. The sky has never looked quite like this. The wind has never whispered this exact phrase through the trees. The face of your beloved, aged by time and touched by sorrow, is more holy now than it ever was. Nothing repeats. Nothing returns. And so you stop waiting. You stop postponing your tenderness. You give now. You weep now. You speak your truth now. Because tomorrow has become a myth, and now is the only altar where anything sacred can be offered. And the offering is you. Not the version of you that pleases, performs, or persuades, but the raw flame that flickers beneath your ribcage, the quiet knowing, the gentle strength, the vulnerable truth. This is your gift to the world, not what you produce, but what you are when all production ceases. You are not here to dazzle with accomplishments, you are here to remind others of their light. By the way you refuse to dim yours, you will not always be understood. That is the cost of living from the soul. But what is misunderstood by minds is often recognized by hearts. You are not here to explain your essence. You are here to embody it. And in doing so, you become the lighthouse that needs no horn to call ships home. Your stillness alone is enough. When death becomes real, not as a fear, but as a presence, you become incapable of squandering yourself. You say no when your spirit shrinks. You say yes when your joy calls. You bow out of arguments that steal your peace and bow into silence that restores it. You no longer count your days by tasks completed, but by truth lived. The sun will rise without your permission and set without your resistance. Your task is not to control the arc of light, it is to receive it, to let it wash over your face, to let it illuminate your shadows, to let it remind you that you too are made of radiance, that you too were never meant to hide. And so you begin to walk as if the earth were sacred again, because it is. You touch things with reverence. You look people in the eyes, not as distractions, but as fellow sparks of the infinite. You speak less, but with more weight. You choose your presence over your performance. You move not to get somewhere, but to feel where you are. Even your pain softens, not because it disappears, but because it is no longer exiled. You sit with it. You welcome it as part of this great tapestry of what it means to be alive. And strangely, it begins to heal, not by force, but by love, by inclusion, by the sacred light of your unflinching attention. You are no longer at war with yourself. This is what it means to live each day as if it were your last, not recklessly, but reverently, not with haste, but with holiness. You do not try to escape life. You press your ear against it and listen for the heartbeat of God. There comes a moment when living with the truth of impermanence no longer feels like a burden, but becomes a doorway not to despair, but to devotion. For when you truly know that nothing lasts forever, you stop wasting your sacred energy on the trivial. You stop clinging to the roles that dim your light, the opinions that drown your voice, the attachments that whisper promises of security but chain you to illusion. You begin to live, not to protect your life, but to offer it. And what a stunning offering your life becomes. Every word you speak begins to carry weight, because you understand it might be the last your lips will ever form. So you choose kindness, not because it's easy, but because cruelty feels foreign to your essence. You offer forgiveness, not because the wound was small, but because you refuse to let it define your final breath. You speak the truth you've buried beneath years of politeness and pretending not for applause, but for alignment. Because living in dishonesty, even if socially rewarded, is too great a price to pay when every day might be your last canvas. You notice in your living a soft rebellion taking shape, not loud, not forceful, but undeniable. You are no longer interested in being impressive. You are interested in being real. You are no longer seduced by speed. You are pulled by presence. You are no longer trying to win a race you never agreed to run. Instead, you walk slowly, barefoot, listening to the earth and your spirit in equal measure. And in that slowness, you find the divine. The eyes of strangers become sacred scripture. The sound of your own breath becomes a hymn. You do not need to go somewhere holy to feel the sacred, because you now realize you carry the temple within you. Every moment is a sanctuary when you show up with reverence. Every conversation becomes communion when you speak from your soul instead of your script. Even the mundane begins to shimmer. The act of tying your shoes becomes a blessing. Washing dishes becomes a meditation. You stop waiting for peak experiences and realize that life is not about the peaks, it is about the presence. The presence you bring to the ordinary, the love you weave into the spaces no one else sees. That is the true miracle. That is where the divine most often hides. And what of your fears? They still come, but they come as visitors now, not masters. They knock, but you no longer build your life around their arrival. You greet them, you learn from them, you let them pass. Because fear too is part of the human palette, but it is not the color with which you will paint your final day. Instead, you reach for the deeper hues: courage, compassion, clarity. You no longer ask life to be easy, you ask to be true within it. You no longer pray for certainty, you pray for peace with the unknown. You no longer demand perfection from yourself or others, you simply invite what is real, what is raw, what is reverent. And then without fanfare, you begin to glow. Not with effort, but with essence. Not because you've reached some spiritual summit, but because you've finally stopped resisting your own light. You realize that you were never broken. You were only buried. Beneath layers of fear, layers of programming, layers of trying to be everything but what you are. And now, in living as though each breath might be your last, you become honest, naked, sacred, alive. This aliveness is not adrenaline. It is not excitement. It is something quieter, more enduring. It is a presence so deep it silences the noise of comparison and ambition. It is a love so complete it no longer needs to be earned or chased. It is you in your wholeness, in your holiness, finally meeting life not from the edges of your existence, but from the center. And from that center, you radiate. There is a stillness that only arrives when you've made peace with endings not as tragedies, but as sacred closures, as portals through which your soul passes on its way to remembering what it came here to know. You begin to see that everything that ends does so not to punish, but to reveal. Each departure, each letting go, each final breath, these are not accidents of a cruel universe, but precise invitations from a loving source whispering, now, wake up. And you do. You awaken not in a dramatic instant, but in the slow rising of your own awareness, like a tide that climbs higher with each moment of presence. You start to feel how life has been speaking to you all along in the aches of your longing, in the laughter that came from nowhere, in the heartbreaks that stripped away your pretense, and in the quiet joy that asked for no audience. It was all the divine waiting patiently for you to notice that you were never alone, that you were never unloved, that nothing, absolutely nothing, has ever been wasted. And so when you live this day as if it were your last, you no longer curse the wounds, you bless them, because they softened you, because they opened your heart, because they took you beneath the surface where the eternal speaks. You begin to understand that your life is not a straight line to success or safety. It is a spiral, a sacred unraveling, a return. And every loss that you thought would destroy you only peeled away what could never stay. Every failure that seemed like the end was only an invitation to go deeper. Every delay that left you frustrated was grace in disguise, placing you exactly where love could find you. And now you are here, fully here. You no longer reach forward or grasp backward. You no longer delay your joy for a future version of yourself. You stop bargaining with time. You stop negotiating with your soul. You realize that you do not need to be more enlightened, more accomplished, more anything. You only need to be more present, more honest, more alive to this one sacred breath. This is where the soul lives in the unrepeatable now. You walk through this day as if it were borrowed, as if it were a gift wrapped in wind and light and color, not because it's fleeting, but because it's enough, more than enough. And in that awareness, you begin to notice how your energy changes. You no longer rush, not because there isn't much to do, but because nothing is worth your peace. You no longer argue for your limitations, because you finally see how limitless you are beneath the stories. You no longer seek to control others, because you are too devoted to mastering your own presence. And in that presence, your life begins to bloom, not outwardly, but inwardly. The seeds that were planted long ago by grace, buried beneath fear and waiting for your surrender, begin to open, quietly, miraculously, without demand, without deadlines. You become the flowering of a truth that was never not there. It only needed your stillness to emerge. Even your voice changes. It lowers in volume, but deepens in power. You speak less from opinion and more from knowing. You stop needing to be understood because your truth is no longer up for debate. You realize the only thing worth offering is your presence, unfiltered and unafraid. And this presence, this grounded, sacred, unhurried presence, becomes your medicine, not just for you, but for others. You begin to heal rooms just by walking into them, not because you carry answers, but because you carry alignment. Your very being whispers to others. It is safe to be real. It is safe to feel. It is safe to come home. And that, beloved, is what you are doing. You are coming home. To the part of you that never left, the part untouched by failure or praise, the part beneath the name, beneath the roles, beneath the flesh, the eternal spark clothed in temporary form. So when you live each day as if it were your last, you do not grieve it is too full of grace for that. You do not rush it is too rich for that. You do not fear, you bow. You bow to the mystery. You bow to the beauty. You bow to the ordinary divinity in every passing moment. And in that bowing you rise. There is a soft light that greets you when you have nothing left to chase. It does not arrive with thunder. It does not cry out your name. It simply glows like the hush of morning before the sun breaks open the sky. It is the light of surrender of the soul, no longer trying to be anything more than what it already is. And in that light, you see clearly for the first time there was never anything missing. You begin to live not in defiance of death, but in harmony with life. You stop measuring your days in tasks completed or accolades received, and start measuring them in how gently you held yourself, how courageously you showed up, how fully you loved without guarantee. And in this final recognition, you weep not out of sorrow, but out of reverence, because you see how sacred it all was. The laughter that spilled from your belly, the quiet walks no one noticed, the nights you held your own trembling body and whispered, "Still I rise," the mistakes that shattered you into more honest pieces, the failures that pried open parts of your heart that success never could. It was all sacred. There are no ordinary days, only eyes that have forgotten how to see. And now your vision has returned. You do not ask life for more time. You ask for more depth, more presence, more holy pauses. You do not beg for security. You trust the breath you've been given and the intelligence that gave it. You do not wish for someone else's journey. You walk yours with quiet pride, knowing that even your detours were divinely appointed. And if today truly were your last, you would not panic. You would rise slowly. You would touch the earth with gratitude. You would call those you love and say not, "I need," but "thank you." You would breathe in the scent of rain or the sound of a child's laughter, as if the entire cosmos had orchestrated it just for you. And perhaps you would sit in silence, no need to fill it, no need to run from it. Just sit. And in that sitting, feel your own soul rise to meet you with arms wide open. No judgment, no urgency, just presence. You would realize that nothing more needed to be done, that your being, your presence, your honest existence was enough, always was, always will be. The miracle was never in what you achieved. It was in what you allowed yourself to become. Open, soft, real, awake. And as the day draws its final breath, you would smile, not because everything was easy, but because everything was seen. Everything was lived. Nothing was wasted. You did not sleepwalk through your time here. You did not hide your light beneath the noise. You did not postpone your truth to please a world that never knew your name. You showed up. You felt deeply. You loved anyway. And now, as the sun sets not just on the day, but on the illusion that anything was ever separate from God, you would feel it. Peace, not as a concept, but as a resting place, And so, beloved soul, live today not as a countdown, but as a coronation. Not as a finish line, but as a homecoming. Let your every breath be a benediction. Let your every step be a devotion. Let your life, this one fleeting, eternal, magnificent life, be lived not in fear of the last day, but in honor of every single one. Because in the end, it was never about how long you lived, but how deeply you remembered that each day was a miracle, and you were always the light.